This is Terrence Orange and Banks with Information Age Financial Solutions, coming to you with another great article I found from Zero Hedge. And with everybody doing, especially in the news frame, about the 10-year anniversary since Lehman Brothers crash, I like the way Zero Hedge kind of put this in terms of doing their own little spin of 10 years later, many underwater counties have not escaped the housing crisis. And if you anything in the real estate market, everyone is striving for yield, and a lot of big players have come in, which is pushing up the real estate prices, reminiscing of an echo bubble, but still a little too early to see. But the way things are moving, you got to 2020 before you can sell your property before then. But let's get right into this article. And as always, I'm going to put a link inside the description. Bear with me. Zero Hedge has a ton of advertisements, so I'm going to get this link in the description for you at your leisure. While much of the world has moved on from 2007 housing crisis, which popular real estate markets like New York, Las Vegas, and San Francisco now fully recovered, and in some cases enjoying an even greater bubble, there are still places in the United States that were ignored by the recovery, where the housing collapse still haunts everyday lives and where things simply never got better. Interesting. About 5.1 million homeowners in the United States are still living in the consequences of the global financial crisis, according to a new report by Adam. As of June 30th of this year, about 1 in 10 homes in the United States was seriously underwater, and indicated that the market value of homes were at least 25% lower than the balance of mortgages. Now, while most everything is pointing to increasing homes going up, it's just interesting to see this contrary aspect that a lot of people have not recovered from the last housing crashes. And comparing this, 1 in 10 homes in the United States have still market values were at least 25% lower than the balance of mortgages. While this rate is an improvement over the 12.8 million
Darren, you at the UPS store? Yeah.
The same issue. Again, Zero Hedge's advertisements. Got to be careful about those. There are housing markets that the recovery forgot. Senior Vice President Adams said the towns that have been the most disproportionately affected by the housing crisis are commuter towns, exurbs, and military towns. These types of communities across the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic have seen weaker income and job growth than the rest of the country. They were simply left behind by the way our recovery is staged. Inflated prices prior to the crisis also helped make a true recovery extraordinarily difficult for these areas. As always, I love charts. Look at the trapped and debt-locked homes. Look at the states: Illinois, North Carolina, in particular counties: Boone County, Hoop County, King George County, Virginia. That's interesting. Illinois, Clinton County; Georgia, Loudon County; Virginia, Norfolk City; Pennsylvania, Monroe County; Georgia, Byron County; Iowa, Black Hawk County; and Indiana, Low-Porte County. Probably not pronouncing it right, but still something to look into. Get that. Looking, this was Zero Hedge did in 2006. At the peak of the world, homeowners Michael Payne and his wife Gail escaped from New York City in the country, which is about 80 miles of Chicago, also underwater. There are some houses that were selling for $225,000 during the boom are now valued at $85,000. Repeat that again. There are some houses that were selling for $225,000 during the boom are now valued at about $85,000. It gets worse. At a local housing community in Boone County called Candlewick Lake, a third of the community's housings were vacant by 2010, and unemployment in the area has spiked to 18% after large layoffs at a local auto assembly plant. Everybody hasn't been receiving this recovery, this great economic boom as they've been saying. Again, so many advertisers. Just bear with me a second. It gets ugly, real ugly, and we're still battling to come back from it, says Carl Jansen of Boone County. Like the Payne's home in Monroe County, the community also needs work. Its roads are falling apart, common areas need a facelift, and the once serene community lake has become a cesspool, according to residents who spoke at a recent association meeting. Homeowners due of about $12,000 a year that once seemed reasonable are now deterring potential buyers, which means that every dollar needs to be stretched in order to keep the property kept up. Also disproportionately affected are military communities. Half of the top 10 U.S. counties that are underwater are near military bases and are home to both active duty soldiers and veterans. It's an interesting fact. The VA made financing for many of these homes available, and it also tends to make defaulting difficult for individuals to finance through them. This has enticed many in the military who are underwater to stay with their homes, despite them being worth less than what is left on the mortgage. Poor credit can threaten the security clearance of military members and may put future loans from the VA at risk. Instead, the recovery in housing took the strongest hold in areas like coastal market cities. The markets have came roaring back at the coastal market, says Mark Zandy, chief economist at Moody's Analytics. He said land restrictions and sales to international buyers have helped lower demands in those areas. In the middle of the country, you have more flatline economies. There's no supply constraints. All these things have weighed on prices. Unfortunately, things don't look like they were getting better for those who had missed the recovery and making matters worse. And now it appears that the next housing downturn is upon us. 1 month ago, we explained what the new global housing buzz also looked to be in the midst of popping. Back in July, we discussed why there would be more trouble ahead for the housing market. Oddly, just a few months ago, real estate was still on fire. Prices were blowing past records set during the previous decades. Housing bubbled as desperate buyers bought whatever was available at above the asking price, while homeowners, confident that prices will keep rising, held out for the next big pop to sell. Then, as if someone flipped a switch, the trend shifted into reverse. Interesting. It's the Case-Shiller Home Index. Great place to look at for definitely charts, and you can see it right here. It's starting to go down. Top. And now just in the U.S., but nearly everywhere. This list of recent headlines tells a tale. Housing demand sees biggest drop in more than 2 years. Hamptons property sales slow at caution spreads to the wealthy. Home prices are falling in one of America's richest suburbs. First time ever, more Chinese sellers than buyers. Record drop in foreigners buying U.S. homes. Australian home prices take biggest dips in 2011. At the end of the global housing boom, Manhattan real estate prices plummet, sales tank. These come with the headlines. Again, I'm kind of skimming over it and reading quite quickly, but again, I'm going to put the link inside your leisure, so you can take a look at your leisure. Sorry about that. For the past several decades, it's been the explicit policy of governments and central banks to use low interest rates and most recently direct purchase of stocks and bonds to reflate the prices of financial assets. The goal was to make holders of these assets feel rich and smart, and therefore more inclined to borrow and spend on frivolous stuff that will boost GDP. This is called the wealth effect, and it's been firing on all cylinders in the age of QE and ZIRP. ZIRP, if you're not familiar with the term, QE is quantitative easing, and ZIRP is zero interest rate policy. But all that borrowing by individuals to buy houses and SUVs and 70-inch flat screens, corporations to buy back their stock at record high prices, and governments to build unnecessary roads and bridges to invade each other has left a lot of debt lying around that has to be paid off with future cash flow. This means for people like Michael and Gail Payne and those in Boone County, Illinois, those could get significantly worse before they ever get better. I think that's in the article there. Captured my attention. If you have a chance to, especially if you're real estate, you want to pay more attention to the articles. Be careful. Real estate is always regional and also based on your area. If you're experiencing a boom now, the slowdown is beginning, and just to be mindful of that. When a slowdown comes, maybe more opportunity in the future for you to buy something at a more reasonable price. Until my next video, please subscribe, leave some comments. I'm out.